Coco, who was the chairman of Eskom, and Anuj Singh, who was the CFO. For those of you that have kids, you might have seen a cartoon on TV called Pinky and the Brain. So every cartoon ends with Pinky saying to the brain, "What are we going to do tomorrow, brain?" And he says, "Same thing we do every day, Pinky, try and take over the world." And that's exactly what Mashele Coco and Anuj Singh did. Mashele Coco was Pinky, and Anuj Singh was the brain. And I told him in Parliament, that is exactly the analogy that I would use for them. Anuj Singh was an absolute technical genius in how he moved from one state entity to the next. He bought certain people off, he bought certain assets in a way that it was done that for years and years we didn't realize that this roundabout undercover way of purchasing a country was actually being executed. So I come from an Italian background, my heritage is Italian. Some of you on Twitter will know me as the daughter of the Dark Father. The concept of the mafia is not an unknown concept to anyone from an Italian background. And the core that holds the mafia together is called the Code of Silence, which is called omertà. And there's been books written about it, and it's a very real thing. And the theory behind it is you see nothing, you hear nothing, and you say nothing. That's omertà, that's what it means. And when you're in a crime syndicate in Italy, you abide by this code. You abide by omertà. And it takes one person to break omertà, and the cards come falling down. So along comes the ANC, and it's about time now for their Congress to happen. So the political will now exists for Parliament to execute and show a bit of muscle and actually show Zuma up for being one of the enablers. And I say very carefully, one of the enablers of state capture. Because it is now politically expedient to do so. We need to expose Zuma as being corrupt and his cronies being corrupt because a certain individual now wants to become the leader of the ANC. And all of a sudden, Parliament says, yes, public enterprises, off you go with your committee, whatever resources you need, you've got. This is fantastic, we think. Can't believe this is happening. We can't believe Parliament's agreed to this. No, everyone's saying, oh, it will fall the first day. The first day you sit, it will fall. So we sat down as a committee, as Team South Africa, and we said, there's no way we can do this on our own. We need legal experts, we need people who are experts in accounting, things like that. We need them to come in and assist us because at the end of the day, we're politicians. And let's be honest, politicians are very good at listening to the sound of their own voices, but we also, it's very hard for us to be subjective because we're very objective in what our goals are. So what we did is we got Advocate Vanara, who, I don't know if anyone's ever seen Advocate Vanara. Advocate Vanara is about this high, and what he lacks in height, he makes up for 600 million times in ethics and in patriotism. Because on the first day that the Public Enterprises Committee inquiry sat, Advocate Vanara was offered a bribe so eye-wateringly large to fell the commission. And he turned around and said no. He walked straight to the Speaker's office. He wrote an affidavit informing the Speaker as to which minister had offered him the bribe. He then walked to the Cape Town Central Police Station and he laid a criminal charge. To me, the unsung hero of the tale is Advocate Vanara, and he always will be. He single-handedly made sure that the bad guys realized that we meant business. Black First, Land First arrived. So we're sitting there. And in walks Black First, Land First. We refuse to allow you to have your commission. Like, you know when you sit there and you go, okay. And you look around and everyone's looking at each other and you're going, is he joking? I have to know how to approach this. Is the guy joking? So someone says to you, well, why don't you go and ask? Like, let's not try and guess, because like Parliament is just sitting there, like, all the parliamentary people that work in Parliament, they're called the ushers. The ushers are like, this has never happened before. We don't know how to deal with this situation. So I think, well, okay, let me go see what they want. Now I realize, I'm 6'2" and I wear heels, which makes me about 6'4", and I'm not exactly the smallest human being you've ever seen. So all I did was I walked to the back where they were. And I realized that as I was walking, so this group was walking back. and everyone in Parliament started laughing. And then I realized it's like an ostrich. If an ostrich attacks you, all you have to do is this. And then the ostrich runs because they see something that's bigger than them. And I realized that this Mickey Mouse militia required one person to stand up and say, yes, what you gonna do? And literally, this little Mickey Mouse militia just went, okay, we're going. And I'm not saying I did anything spectacular. I'm simply pointing out that all I did was stand up and walk towards them. And that's what it took to get them out of Parliament. That's it. No bouncers, no blood, no nothing. Just one person saying, no, you're not going to disrupt us. It's time for you to leave. It's been real. Goodbye. And they left. So we had a Mickey Mouse militia, disappeared. We had a bribe, gone. Then, my favorite, 6 backbenchers of the ANC decide, this Congress is coming up, might be a good opportunity for us to seek favor with the boss. Let's call a press conference in Parliament. And in this press conference, we're going to say that this committee cannot sit, that it's an invalid committee, that the people sitting on the committee are invalid. Now, I want to point out at this point that, the people sitting on this committee are Mondli Gungubele, who's now the Deputy Minister of Finance, Pravin Gordhan, Dr. Lesufi. These are people that are heavyweight in the ANC. And these 6 backbenchers, one of them, who you might know as being the zapper, the guy who flicks zaps in Parliament all the time, is known as the Honourable Dirks. I like to switch the letters around in the name a little bit, if you know what I mean. They call this press conference. And literally, Team South Africa goes outside. They're having this press conference right outside our venue. Team South Africa stands there, and the media are like, yeah, what's your story? So the one guy starts talking, and the media literally start laughing. That, like laughing yoga, when one person starts laughing and then everyone else starts laughing, that eventually people are like, ah! And these guys are like, all right, this was a spectacular fail, and they just packed up their stuff and they walked away. So, the Bring It On speech that some of you may have heard, I mentioned these things. I mentioned the Mickey Mouse militia that tried to stop us. I mentioned the bribe that didn't work. And I mentioned the little press conference called by 6 little men. Because that's what it was. Nothing worked. The final attempt, and what I believe was the nail in the coffin, was when a delegation was sent to Luthuli House. And this delegation went to Luthuli House and said, you will not allow Public Enterprises Committee to start with their investigations. And you know what? Luthuli House turned around and said, our power goes so far, but it cannot go further than the will of the public. Because the very next day, that mass march that happened through Johannesburg, that landed up at Mary Fitzgerald Square, happened. And the ANC knew very well that if they had tried to stop it at that point, there would have been a complete and utter revolution at Luthuli House itself. Never mind us, at Luthuli House itself. So, we have with us today a friend who's from the ANC, and he will tell you that there are people in the ANC who themselves were trying to stop state capture. And I know this to be true because I sat with them. I sat with them in committee for 8 months. Daphne Ranton, who was the chairperson of the committee, I thought that the stuff happening to me was pretty unpleasant. I couldn't come home for 2 months because I have 5 nieces and nephews. And there's no way I can put because they're my children, I can't put their lives in danger. So for 2 months, I stayed away from my family to make sure that they were safe. And I thought that was pretty tough going. Daphne's children, who go to school in Aliwell North, they were walking home from school. And a black Merc pulled up with tinted windows, you know, like the typical gangster scenario. Window opened, and they said, "Tell your mother to stop her rubbish, otherwise we come for you." Now imagine as a mother, I'm sure many of you are your parents here. Imagine as a mother or a father, knowing that gangsters know where your kids go to school, they know when your kids leave school, and they're actually willing to go to your kids. You know why? Because they aren't stupid. People know, threaten me until you're blue in the face. Threaten my family. And then you're going to have some kind of reaction. And that's what they did with Daphne. And you know what Daphne did? She came to Parliament the very next day. She said, "Morning everyone. Before we start, I'd like to tell you what happened." And Daphne went public with the whole story. And as Daphne went public, so every member of the ANC stood up and told their story, every member of the DA stood up and we told our story. And so it was so exposed that if anything had happened to any of us, it just would have been too obvious as to what had happened and who had done it. It became too obvious. But now back to Omerta and how we managed to break it. We finally get the sitting to happen. And it's like adrenaline is coursing through your veins. I remember the first day sitting there, and there were every single media house in the country was in front of you. And you realize that the entire country is watching. And you have to ask the right question. Because you know what it's like when the Springboks play rugby? Everyone becomes the coach. It's the same in an inquiry. Every lawyer, every politician, anyone interested would be sitting there going, "Natasha, you asked the wrong question. You should have asked this, or you should," and you know, I mean, because you would have been doing it yourself if you were sitting at home. So there is this unbelievable pressure knowing that people are watching you and they're expecting you to ask the right questions. And you just pray to God, whoever your God is, that you've done enough research, that you've got enough proof, and that you actually are able to steel yourself at the time. Because I remember thinking, I hope on the camera you can't see my shirt doing this. Because my heart was beating so hard, I was convinced that you could see my shirt moving. And then when you start asking, you start realizing that it's actually a lot easier, because to be a good liar, you have to have a good memory. And not many people have a good memory, especially when it dates back a couple of months. So the irony of it will never fail me. The fact that the first person to appear before us was ex-chairperson Tsotsi. I mean, what are the chances that the guy's name is Tsotsi? It's uncanny. Anyway, so he sits in front of us, and my ANC colleagues start asking questions, and I look at them and I'm like, "You are brave beyond measure. You are brave beyond measure, because you have just," I mean, there are people in your own party who will now absolutely despise you. So already you're filled with a sense of pride that a South African has shown patriotism beyond belief. And then you realize that this person has painted themselves into the corner. And all you need is to prove one lie. So how it works is the ANC get to ask the first question, and then the official opposition asks the next question. That's how it always works. So by the time it came for me to ask my question, all I did was I needed to ask him one question. And I said, "You signed in to Melrose Arch on I've forgotten the date now, and you had lunch at Jamie's Italian with Ajay Gupta. And I know this to be true because Ajay Gupta was wearing tracksuit pants and flip-flops. And when he realized that obviously I had a photo of this, otherwise how would I know what Ajay Gupta was wearing? He said, "Could we please stop? Could we please adjourn? I would like to be sworn in under oath." Now what happens when you're sworn in under oath in Parliament? Whatever you say about another person cannot be used against you in terms of defamation. So they can't sue you for saying something. So in other words, Tian can come to Parliament and he can say, I'd like to be sworn in under oath, and he can say, I thought Natasha's, the fact that Natasha didn't wear a DA t-shirt to this event was unbelievably appalling. And because he's sworn in under oath, I can't then go out and say, I'm going to sue you for saying that I should have worn a DA t-shirt. So it can be used in court, the information you give, but no one can sue you in your personal capacity. And the minute he asked to be sworn in under oath, we knew. We knew he was going to sing like a canary. And what happened? Gets sworn in, signs the pledge. We're all sitting there going, no, we're like, who knew it would happen this fast? Like, amazing. And he said, right, this is what happened. I got a phone call. I was told to go to Melrose Arch. I got to Melrose Arch. There were 3 brothers there. I think one of them was AJ Gupta because I've seen the photo. I'm not sure. I was told that this person had to be put on the board. I was told that a deal was going to go through with Optimum Coal, and I was told just to sign it off. And so the house of cards came crumbling down. And from one person's evidence, we were able then to start calling in a succession of witnesses to come in, people like Bianca Goodson, who could prove that a company called Trillion had done immense amounts of work for Eskom, that they'd issued invoices for this work, but no work had ever been done. We found out that a company called Trillion had worked through a company called McKinsey. You see, when transactions become international, it's hard to track them because we, and I'm incredibly proud to say this, we have the greatest governor of a reserve bank anywhere in the world. Lesetja Kganyago is the greatest governor of the Reserve Bank anywhere in the world. But he can track money that legally leaves our shores. He can't track where it goes. Then you have to contact that particular country's governor to find out what's happened to the money. And if that governor doesn't want to work with you, it's a pretty difficult situation. So what we did is this. We figured out, by joining the dots, that money was being used, going legally through our borders, into India via the Bank of Baroda. So what we did is we wrote to the governor of the Reserve Bank in India. I did. And I said, I have reason to believe that money is being deposited into the Bank of Baroda in India via unscrupulous practices in South Africa, and we'd like you to investigate it. The governor of the Reserve Bank of India took 4 days, and he froze the accounts of the Bank of Baroda. That's incredible. That shows a man of ethics, that shows a man of strength of character. So South Africans were getting angry. They were like, oh, this is taking so long and the money is already offshore. Yes, a lot of the money was already offshore, but the money was being seized everywhere that it was going offshore. And I'll end the talk now so that we can start questions by telling you about the greatest victory we've had so far. And that is how we got 1 billion South African rand back from McKinsey. Now McKinsey is a consulting firm, international. They have, their head offices are in the US and in England. We found out through a leaked Gupta email and through the evidence given to us by whistleblowers that McKinsey had used a company called Trillion in South Africa as their sort of go-between between Eskom and themselves in doing consultancy work. It's over there, the yellow phone.
It's okay.
Is it all right?
Yeah.
Okay. So McKinsey had written a letter to South Africa McKinsey and said, please do not do work with Trillion. We have ranked them as a high-risk company. We do not know enough about them for the sums of money that will pass between our firm and this particular firm. It is our advice and our instruction that you do not work with Trillion. McKinsey South Africa ignored a direct instruction from McKinsey in America. They ignored the advice and they went ahead and they did work with Trillion. It then came out that work was never done. Invoices went through Trillion and went through McKinsey that actually never happened. In a nutshell, that's how simple it was. The invoices never happened. So the head of McKinsey was brought to South Africa He testified before us. You might remember his testimony ended with him crying. He said he broke down in tears. He said, I'm embarrassed, I am appalled, my company's reputation has been destroyed. This should have never happened. How do I make this better? And I, very sort of tongue-in-cheek, said, pay back R1 billion and it will go a long way. And he looked up and he said, the R1 billion will be paid back immediately. And that R1 billion has come back to South Africa. So we think of it as a drop in the ocean because we're talking about billions and billions of rand. But the thing is, we trace them down one at a time. How do you eat an elephant? One bite at a time. That's how you do it. And so we've started with Eskom. Our committee's finished with Eskom and we're going to release a report on Eskom. We then move on to Transnet, we move on to Denel, because the state-owned entities were used as the conduit for state capture. But here's the thing, and this is what you're going to hear very strongly from Team One South Africa. I'm sure many of you would know that the DA launched its election campaign last Saturday, and in this election campaign there are 11 of us that champion a certain cause. And my cause that I champion is state capture. And I have one goal at present. The goal is to make sure that Denel and Transnet appear before Parliament urgently, that the Hawks continue executing the good work, and I emphasize the word good, that they've been doing. I've lodged 14 criminal charges, and all 14, I have case numbers and are being investigated. We know this. We know this to be fact. We know that the investigations are almost finished. But the ANC must appear before the Zondo Commission as a political party, because it must be explained why a political party allowed members to execute corruption on a scale of which the world has almost never seen, and more importantly, why many of those members remain cabinet ministers and a deputy president after everything that we know. So 9 members of the ANC, at the very least, must appear before the Zondo Commission. Because if we want to get to the heart of state capture, it wasn't just Eskom, it wasn't just Denel, it was local governments, it was municipal governments, it was district councils, it was Vrede Dairy, it was Life Isidimeni. All of these things fall under the banner of state capture. It's when bad people are allowed to flourish. And that is what we have to get to the bottom of. The Zondo Commission, let me tell you, it's moving slowly. But these commissions do move slowly because it takes a lot of time to go through the evidence. Judge Zondo is doing superb work. He's doing superb work. And already what is coming out now, people are going, yeah, we knew it was bad, but we had no idea just how bad it was. The good news is this. Enough South Africans are willing to stand up. Enough South Africans are willing to put politics aside. And enough South Africans are willing to say, our country will survive, and it will survive because we are going to stand together and fight the bad guys. There is nothing wrong with South Africa that cannot be fixed by what is right with South Africa. It is okay to have varying political views. When it becomes dangerous is when you have one group of people who follow, like sheep, a particular political party and have no divergent views. It is good to have various political parties. It is healthy and it is a must. We must be able to sit down and have different ideological views, and we must be able to argue each other on ideology. You must have liberals, you must have socialists, you must have all of these people that come together and create this broth that is democracy. That's what creates a healthy democracy.
Yeah.
It becomes unhealthy when we don't fight amongst each other. And I'm not talking about physical fighting, I'm talking about intellectual, ideological fighting. I want a communist to sit down and tell me why he thinks his Marxist theory is better than my liberalism theory. I want to have that fight with him. In my own political party, I want to be able to stand up and say to my leader, I completely disagree with what you've said, explain to me why you think you're right. I want fellow members of parliament to stand up and say we need a policy review on this because the way we've taken this decision forward is not in the best interest of South Africa. It's when we stop doing that and we follow like sheep that things become problematic. So I want to say this to you. There is nothing that sells in a newspaper like sex and scandal. So when politicians fight amongst each other, people think it's scandal. It's not scandal. It's actually quite healthy. You do not want a group of sheep following each other. Certainly not what I want. I want to be able to stand up and say, this is what I think on X. And I want the person sitting next to me to say, I completely disagree with you. Well, I understand that the principle is this. This is how I think the execution should happen. Every political party should have these kind of discussions within them. And if they're not having them, that's what creates a dictatorship. So please bear that in mind next time you open a paper and you see DA caucus discusses, what was a good way? The BEE policy. And everyone goes, oh, the DA is fighting about BEE. No, the DA is having a very necessary discussion about, is the BEE policy as it is now the best for the interests of South Africans? Or should we look at re-looking it and seeing how it should be executed? Because at the moment, we're not seeing job creation, we're seeing the creation of billionaires. And even the ANC of themselves are saying, look, you know, there's empirical evidence. I did a Power FM show the other night, and I had the very newly elected president of the BBC come in. And I said to him, I want to know what your opinion on BEE is. And he said to me, the injustices of the past must be rectified. We all look, I mean, there's no one in this room that doesn't agree with that. Everyone agrees with that. He said, but people need jobs. We have enough millionaires. And that is the fundamental principle. And that is something that whether you're in the ANC, whether you're in the IFP, whether you're in the DA, whether you're in the ACDP, it's all about creating an economic environment where more people can become active in that economic environment. And state capture very nearly collapsed our economy, but we caught it in time. So, the tap has been turned off, no more money can leave, now we concentrate on getting the money back. It's coming in slowly, it should be coming in faster, but as the Hawks progress with their particular investigations, so they'll be able to start bringing in the money faster. But the point is this, South Africans proved again, we are brave, we are resilient, and when push comes to shove, we have the ability to stand up against the bad guy. We've proved it. The 2019 election is going to be very, very telling. Very telling. And I'll tell you why. No one political party at this point, not one, can accurately predict what even a rough outcome of the election is going to be. Because day by day, the polls will change. Day by day. Because I'll tell you this, Natasha Mazzone can stand up one day and say something that will irritate a whole grouping of people. They'll do an Ipsos poll, and all of a sudden, the DA's gone down 3%. Then Cyril Ramaphosa will say, oh, I sat at the table with Trump, but I didn't discuss the statement with him, and that irritates a whole lot of people, and the ANC drops by 15% in the Ipsos poll the next day. And so it goes. So it is literally an open field at the moment. It is an open field. And from the DA's perspective, let me tell you, it's ours for the taking. It is ours for the taking. This is what it's going to take. It's going to take policies that are effective, that are manageable, and that are in the best interests of South Africans. And it's going to take proof that people can trust us with their vote. And let me tell you what makes us different from the ANC. We never ask you to give us your vote and to pledge eternal loyalty to us. The DA will never ask you for that. The DA asks you to lend us your vote. And if you don't like what you see, you take your vote back. But we ask you to lend us your vote so that we can prove ourselves to you. And that's the difference between us and any political party. We don't expect blind loyalty. We expect you to stand up and tell us, you stuffed up, I'm not impressed, I'm taking my vote back, Or, Sarah, you've done a bloody amazing job in Ward 23. You've proved that we can trust you, and we're giving you our vote again. That's how it works. That's how democracy should work. And on that note, I've spoken enough.
Never.
More than enough. And I'd like to take some questions if you've got any for me.